Welcome to Lazio Lounge, the one and only Lazio podcast in English, brought to you every week with co-host Vittorio Campanile and Alison McKenzie. You can listen and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify and Spreaker. Please remember to rate and review the show. You can also support our show on our Patreon page, patreon.com/Lazio Lounge. Membership starts at just $2 a month, and you will help us improving our show. And now it's time to talk about Lazio. Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Lazio Lounge. Unbelievable, Lazio won again against Udinese. We're going to talk about this, and we're going to talk about even the coming match, Lazio-Juventus, a very important match for Lazio, and another great test for the team of Simone Inzaghi. And I'm here to talk about it with Alistair McKenzie. Hello Alistair, how are you?
Hello, yeah, I'm fine. I'm a bit wet. I've just been complaining about the Roman rain. You're not having it because I'm from Scotland, but trust me, this is the one thing people don't realise is quite how bad Rome is for rain in November. I think I'm a bit boring because I keep talking about it, but it keeps surprising me.
And we have a special guest because we have Carlo Garganese to talk about Serie A and the next coming match, Lazio-Juventus. Ciao Carlo.
Ciao guys, yeah, thanks for having me. And I can confirm the weather's not very good down in the south of England either. It's not raining, but it's pretty cold.
Yes, before talking about Serie A and the coming match, I have to say that not seeing Patrick winning the Ballon d'Or this year, it's completely unacceptable, I think. I mean, how can it be possible? Not in the top 10. Patrick, Alistair.
Yeah, I was as shocked as you were. I was expecting a Patrick Bastos 1-2, like all the bookies were, but it's not to be. So yeah, another robbery from the disgraceful. It's all a fix, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Carlo, were you expecting a Cristiano Ronaldo? Do you think he was deserving it?
Well, there's been some strange choices in the Ballon d'Or. I mean, this year Mahrez was in the top 10. I mean, Riyad Mahrez couldn't even get in the Manchester City team last season, and he somehow made the top 10 of the Ballon d'Or. But yeah, Ronaldo didn't even turn up. We know how childish Ronaldo can be. So as soon as he knew that he wasn't winning it, and he didn't deserve to win it. But as soon as he knew that he wasn't winning it, he didn't turn up. I think he's going to the Gala di Calcio in Milan, because I think he's going to win that award for the best player of last season. But yeah, he didn't deserve to win Ronaldo. That's for sure.
If a penalty against Sassuolo isn't enough to do it for you, then I don't know what is.
Yeah, well, he's got 3 penalties this season of his 6 goals, and he's not on good form ahead of the Lazio game this week. So it's good omen for you guys.
Carlo, watching from outside, are you surprised to see Lazio third playing this good football, or were you expecting to see Simone Inzaghi's team performing that well?
I am surprised, yes, because I mean, when I was asked at the start of the season who I saw as the top 4. Obviously there's still a long way to go, but I honestly didn't see Lazio as a contender for the top 4. I thought they'd be probably, fighting for 5th or 6th place. I mean, I saw Juventus, Inter and Napoli. I saw those 3 teams as well ahead of the rest, and I thought at the very best maybe Lazio could fight for 4th, but I saw Atalanta and maybe Roma as being more likely. But that's obviously changed now, and Lazio are in incredible form. I don't need to say 6 wins on the bounce, and looking in a really strong position now in 3rd place. When you look at how badly Napoli are doing, and it's just been amazing, incredible, really. And obviously you guys have struggled in the Europa League, but you've probably been a little bit unlucky in Europe as well. But in Serie A, I mean, I am surprised, yeah.
So do you think Lazio has the chance to beat Juventus next Sunday? It's true that Juventus is not the team that play badly two matches in a row. They didn't convince me against Sassuolo Sunday. And now there is a tough match for them against Lazio. And, you know, the problem with Rome, and I don't know if Alistair agree with me, is that after 6 matches in a row, in a row won from Lazio, people start talking about Scudetto. Now, I really don't think this team is able to fight for the Scudetto. I would be surprised if Lazio would arrive second, to be honest with you. But
Come on.
in a single match,
Seriously talking about a Scudetto.
They have been talking about that. Come on. And I think in a single match, Lazio can put under pressure Juventus like they did at San Siro against Inter. But I think Scudetto is a little bit too much.
Yeah, of course it's too much. I mean, I think people can get overexcited, but I haven't seen an awful lot of that, if I'm honest. I haven't really heard people getting too carried away, apart from the odd joke about it. But it's... Lazio are a team that do go on these runs, and we've in the last few seasons have gone in good runs of form. Yes, this one is a bit better than a lot of them have been in the past. With 6 wins in a row is some serious form. But yeah, I mean, I think the gap between the top 2 and the rest is fairly pronounced, and we'll have to wait and see what the objectives are. I think that for me, there's absolutely no doubt that scraping 4th place at the end of the season would still be very, very successful. Like Carlos said, not everybody was recognising Lazio as a top 4 contender at the start of the season. I mean, I put them down as 4th. But then again, if the opportunity is there to push further up the table, then they got to take advantage of the fact that these other teams are struggling. Napoli are a complete disaster. Cagliari, by the looks of things, are starting to drop off a bit. And yeah, it looks like it's a kind of two-way fight between the 2 Roman clubs at the moment.
Carlo, do you agree with what Alistair is saying? The fight for the Champions League spot, it looks like to be a fight between Lazio and Roma?
I would say a fight between Lazio, Roma and Atalanta right now. I mean, I wouldn't rule Napoli out. I mean, Napoli, you'd think surely with the quality that they've got in their squad, that eventually they're going to start coming up the table. But you know, they've left themselves, you know, a lot to do. I mean, I think, is it 8 points? Lazio ahead of Napoli now?
10.
10 points. Yeah, 10 points ahead of Napoli now. So, you know, there's a long way to go. They can claw that back, but that won't be easy. And the club is in such chaos. I mean, there's a civil war there. And, you know, Napoli have got a very, very tough January coming up where they potentially could lose even more points. So, you know, it's not going to be easy for them, to come back into it. So you know, Lazio have got a great chance, and it looks like, you know, you guys are going to go out of the Europa League as well. I mean, you need a miracle really in that last game because Celtic have got nothing to play for. So if Lazio go out of the Europa League, then, you know, you can really concentrate on getting that 4th place. So I think you're in a very, very strong position right now. That's absolutely.
Yep, I think so. The problem with Napoli, I think, is that it's not the manager. I mean, if they sack Ancelotti, the real problem is the owner at this point. There's a fight between the players and the owner, and the only way to solve this problem is or the owner, De Laurentiis, sell Napoli, or the players leave. So that's going to be quite complicated. But talking about next Sunday, we were all a little bit anxious to see how Sarri will perform with Juventus. I thought he started really well. But in the last couple of matches, something didn't work out. What's your point on Juventus? Is Sarri performing as expected? Are you surprised about Juventus' form?
I mean, I would say more than a couple of matches. I would say going back to the end of October, throughout the whole of November, I would actually say the last 8 matches. I mean, I've been tweeting about it that really it's been a miracle that it's taken until Sunday for Juventus to be overtaken by Inter. I think that probably the 7 matches before the Sassuolo game, you could make a case that Juventus didn't deserve to win any of those matches. They really have just ground out a few, fortunate wins through a moment of individual magic from like a Dybala, as we saw against Milan and against Atletico Madrid, or they've just used that kind of never say die attitude to kind of get them over the line. But their actual performances have been very poor, and Juventus hired Sarri to improve the quality of Juventus's play, because under Max Allegri, Juventus obviously were getting success in Serie A, and for a while they were doing well in Europe as well, without winning the Champions League. But the last 2 seasons of Allegri's time in Turin, they really went stale, and the quality of the football was really bad. It was dour football, just grinding out wins. So Juventus hired Sarri because they wanted to improve the play of Juve, and they hoped that would then have the knock-on effect of them being more successful in Europe as well. So far, the quality of Juventus' play hasn't really improved. I think there was a few flickers in October. I think we saw that in the win in Milan against Inter, where Juventus played some nice stuff. Also in Madrid, in the 2-2 draw against Atletico, that Juventus, sporadically played some nice football. But the whole kind of Sarri ball I hate that term, by the way, but Sarri ball that kind of everyone was hoping for him to bring to Juventus, we haven't seen that. And I think, like I said, since November, the signs of improvement in the play that we saw in October, that has completely gone back to square one. And really, if you didn't know any better, you'd think that Allegri was still on the bench, because the passing is bad, the play is slow, everyone looks lackluster. It's taken them to the last 20-30 minutes of games to really get going and react, and we saw that against Sassuolo. So yeah, it's not been great. I don't blame Sarri that much, and the reason for that is I think that if you hire someone like Sarri, you have to give him the players to play his type of football, because we know his strengths, but we also know his limitations, and he needs certain types of players, technical players that are good in playing the short game, short passing, 1 touch, 2 touch, quick pass and move, high press. He needs fast players that can do that. I don't think he has that at Juventus. The likes of Matuidi and Rabiot and in some of the others, especially in midfield, they can't really play the kind of football that Sarri wants. So I think it's been difficult for him, and I think it's unfair to criticise Sarri for Juventus's poor play. So yeah, I think it hasn't been easy, but, and this is the but, at the end of the day, we're in December now, and Juventus are still unbeaten in all competitions. The only team in Europe's major leagues to be unbeaten. So you have to give him credit for that.
This is a thing that I was going to pick up on, is that, do you think, to me it seems like this ability to continue an unbeaten run and grind out these results, even when they're not playing particularly well, is a very Allegri trait, that I wonder if that's a hangover from his time there and still having so many of those players there, or something else. And also, I wanted to pick up on something you mentioned there about the fact that Juve have actually played some of their best football in the big games this season, the Atletico Madrid game and the Inter match you mentioned. And I think that, for me, is, from a Lazio perspective, is perhaps a cause for concern, that they do seem to be able to, although struggling against Sassuolo and failing to beat them, when it matters, they've kind of risen to that challenge, as far as I've seen so far this season. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would say that's a fair point. I would say that Juventus probably have played better against the bigger teams. Even against Napoli on the first day of the season, until they kind of had a little mini collapse in the second half, Juventus played some good football in the first half. And then again, those matches that you mentioned. So yeah, that is a cause for concern for Lazio, because this now becomes a really, really big game for Juve. They've now been overtaken by Inter, an Inter team who are on incredible form themselves, just like Lazio, and who in my opinion, I think a real contender to win the Scudetto now. Juventus really, they can't make too many mistakes. Antonio Conte is the kind of coach that once he gets his team in gear and they start pulling away, it's difficult to catch them. So they can't let Inter pull away. So not only, that they need to go for the win really in Rome. So that is a concern. And like Vito said at the start of the show, is Juventus, they're the kind of team that they rarely slip up twice in a row. They're like a wounded beast, and I'm sure they'll be firing on the weekend.
Let's hope not. But yeah, I agree. Juventus, it's tough. And something you said is Juventus, even when they're not playing well, they still have, Pjanic, Dybala, who started playing really well, that can decide a match, even if they're not playing great football. So this is the part that Lazio should be really concerned, because Lazio defense, even though it was a clean sheet this Sunday, can make mistakes. And, making a mistake when you are playing against Cristiano Ronaldo, even though probably it's not the best Cristiano Ronaldo now. Dybala, if he's going to play, but even Higuain is in great shape. Pjanic is always very dangerous. That's the biggest part that concern me. Juventus has so many good players that it's very hard to stop them all. So I think what Lazio will have to try is to score one goal more than Juventus if they want to win this match. But yeah, stopping all these champions is going to be really, really complicated, I fear.
I've been encouraged, just to pick up on what you say about the defence. I think I've been really encouraged by the fact that Lazio have managed to keep so many clean sheets this season, though, because, like you say, there are players in there capable of making individual errors, and we have seen that over the years. But I think the actual collective structure of the team has been improved. The way they defend in transition has been improved this season, and as a result, we've seen, the rewards on the pitch. I mean, that was Lazio's 5th clean sheet of the season in Serie A on Sunday, which is a pretty good tally after what are we on, 13, 14 games. And I think that perhaps they're not getting quite as much credit for that, because the attacking side of Lazio's game is what dominates the headlines, and rightly so, with the way that Ciro Immobile is playing, Luis Alberto's playing, and Correa and so on. But I think that's been a real positive.
Yeah, Carlo, what do you think? Lazio typical sign players that are not very glamour, like Acerbi, Lazzari, and Ciro Immobile, but they're very efficient. I'm thinking about Ciro Immobile, that is top scorer, etc., but doesn't get that many praise from the press, international press, and so on. What's your thought about Ciro Immobile? Do you rate him at the moment the best Italian striker, or do you think it's just thanks to Luis Alberto, Correa, that creating so many chances for him?
Tough question. I think it depends how you rate a player. I mean, in terms of statistics, and looking at, what the players are producing, there's no doubt that Ciro Immobile is, not only the best Italian striker, he's the most productive striker in the whole of Europe. I mean, he's at the top of the European Golden Boot race right now. He's even scored more goals than Robert Lewandowski, who's been shattering records since the start of the season. So you can't argue with his numbers. Not only this season, but throughout his time at Lazio. I mean, he scored over 100 goals for Lazio in 3 and a bit seasons. I mean, that is absolutely unbelievable. I mean, if the likes of Messi and Ronaldo were doing that, you wouldn't hear the end of it. So in a way, yes, I think his achievements and what he's done at Lazio has been underplayed around Europe. But I think that the reason for that is obviously because, he's playing for Lazio and he's not playing for Real Madrid or Barcelona or one of the super clubs. And, it's unfortunate at times, but that's just how it is. And I think with Immobile is what always counts against him is the fact that, when he was at Borussia Dortmund and he got his chance at a a club that's regularly in the Champions League and fighting for titles, he really bombed there. He only scored 3 goals, Bundesliga goals that season, and then when he went to Sevilla, who, to be fair, are probably, you would say, on the same kind of level as Lazio, he didn't do too well there. So, and then again, obviously with Italy, he went 2 years without scoring a goal for Italy, and he was made a little bit of a scapegoat for the failure to qualify for the 2018 World Cup. And I think from an international point of view, rather than from a national domestic point of view from those that are in Italy, that's probably what people outside of Italy remember about Immobile. And then you get the ignorant, oh, well, it's only Serie A, anyone can score in Serie A. Serie A is no good anymore. You kind of get those kind of comments. So unfortunately, that's probably the reason why Immobile hasn't got more credit. From my point of view, I think for Lazio, he's absolutely outstanding, and he'll go down as one of the greats, even after just 3 seasons. But I do, and this is coming from the outside, I do question whether he could step it up and perform like this for a bigger club, whether he's got the qualities in the game to do that.
I honestly believe that big part of the secret of Ciro Immobile is Luis Alberto. The fact that last year Luis Alberto wasn't playing great and Ciro Immobile didn't score that much, and this year Luis Alberto is back and Ciro Immobile is unstoppable. I think Ciro Immobile is a player who likes to go deep, and Luis Alberto is an incredible assist man. So, but said this, I mean, in Italy at the moment, the competition is between him and Belotti, and I think Belotti is not even close to Ciro Immobile at the moment.
No, I think for me, the big difference here is when you say you're not sure he's got the qualities to step up to a big club. I think the reason he's doing so well at Lazio is that the team's kind of built around him in a way, and it plays to his strengths. So I think he'd do fine at a big club as long as they did the same thing. But the problem is a much bigger club is unlikely to do that. And I think part of his struggles with the national team are that they don't really accommodate his strengths in that way. He doesn't have a Luis Alberto feeding him. He doesn't have a Joaquin Correa drawing in defenders with dribbles nearby him. He's expected to spearhead a 4-3-3, which is something that he's very, very rarely had to do at Lazio. And he doesn't have as many, like you say, Vittorio, creative players around him. So I think that the kind of part of the secret to Immobile's success at Lazio, is Simone Inzaghi and the way he's built this team and the way he's been able to recognise, as a former striker himself, how he can get best out of this player with the players he's got in his squad.
Yeah, and that's what I was just about to come back on, because I almost wanted to ask you guys whether, can Immobile only play in a 3-5-2/3-5-1-1 formation? Can he flourish in a 4-3-3? Because I'm kind of looking into, exactly your point there. Is that the reason why maybe Immobile hasn't flourished, say, for the national team and for some of the other clubs that he's played for abroad? Is it because he isn't suited to a 4-3-3 formation?
No, because he played with Zeman in Pescara and he scored a lot of goals there. I think he's
Torino as well. Don't forget.
Yeah, he needs someone that giving the ball in the space, because he's very good when he has space and can go deep behind the defender. Italy, I think, playing a different type of football that it's not perfect for his style of football, but I think he can play different type of football, 4-3-3, 4-4-2. It doesn't matter. It depends if they're looking to play deep, and that's where Immobile excelled. It's even true that this year with Lazzari, he's scoring him much more with the head, because finally crosses are coming in, and that was probably the biggest weaknesses of this team. No cross from the wingers. And now we're seeing even him scoring more. So I think he's becoming more a complete striker.
I think as well that it depends on, I don't think it's simple as saying that whether it's the formation, whether it's 4-3-3 or 3-5-2, because it depends what you want from your number 9, right? I mean, I've seen a lot of people complain when Italy play and Immobile starting that he drifts out to the wing. That's a huge part of his game. That's like Vittorio said, he operates in those spaces and that's what he looks for, and he contributes a hell of a lot to the actual construction of attacks as well as finishing them off. So you can't really complain about those sides of his game because it's a big part of what kind of player he is. But if you're wanting a kind of plug in and play number 9 who just sits on the shoulder, Mauro Icardi style, and waits for his chances, that's not the player you're going to get. So I guess the issue is more with a national team setup that you have a lot less time to actually work out what style you're going to play and practice that, and also find him a partner in crime. You know, when it was Torino, him and Alessio Cerci was the big talking point and how good they were together, and now at Lazio it's Luis Alberto. So I think that there's a good chance he can replicate, you know, his league form with Italy if they work out how best to accommodate him instead of just chucking him in there and hoping that he does things that don't play to his strengths. And I'm hoping that, you know, ahead of the Euros, when Mancini gets a little bit more time with this team to work out the way he wants them to play, that he'll be able to do that. Because in my mind, there's no doubt that on current form, you have to play him ahead of Belotti, and I think he's a better player than Belotti.
Mm. Yeah, it should be very interesting because Italy, you know, they're going into those Euros on such great form, and I think that the one position that most people say is still a weakness for them is the number 9, and maybe that's unfair, given that they've got the top scorer in Europe right now. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see if Immobile gets the nod at the Euros.
He's also got 3 goals and an assist in his last 3 games with Italy, which people seem to forget. But and then, you know, I flagged that up on Twitter over the weekend, and then you get people coming back saying, well, it's easy when you're playing Bosnia and Armenia, but those are the teams you're playing, and those are the kind of teams he was being criticised for not doing well against in the past. So you can't, you know, shower Nicola Barella or Nicolo Zaniolo or whoever with praise when they do well against these teams, and then criticise Immobile when he does for it being the level of opposition he's playing. Yeah, I think it's a sign of improvement.
You cannot always play against Scotland, right? So you have to play even better teams. So
yeah, Italy'd be fine if they played against Scotland.
Anyway, Carlo, are you afraid? Do you think Juventus defense is suited to play against this type of Lazio with Immobile, Luis Alberto playing that well, Correa going deep, etc.? Or do you think, you know, without Chiellini, Juventus is well organized to stop this kind of Lazio?
I don't know. It's tough to say. I mean, under Allegri, the kind of teams that Juventus struggled against were the teams that pressed high up the pitch. I mean, it's a kind of style that most Italian teams have struggled for probably the best part of a decade, because the game is so much slower in Italy that they struggle when, you know, to get out of their half. But obviously with Sarri, he's changed the mentality of the team, so that the defensive line pushes higher up the pitch. So, you know, the game should be on paper should be more condensed into the central third of the pitch. So it depends really, you know, how Lazio deal with that. I mean, for me, Lazio play quite an attacking team. When you can, you know, I mean, assuming they go for a 3-5-2 with Immobile flanked by Correa, and then you've got kind of Milinkovic, Savic, and Luis Alberto as, let's say, 2 of the 3 central midfielders. You know, and Lazzari is very attacking as well. So it's quite an attacking team. So yeah, I'm sure Lazio will put pressure on the Juventus backline. And even though Juventus have got the best defensive record in Serie A this season, they haven't kept that many clean sheets. Certainly not as many as you would expect for a team that have got the best defensive record. And the same in Europe as well. They've conceded a fair few goals as well. So I think Lazio will get their chances. And you know, there are some errors in there. I mean, De Ligt has made quite a few errors. I mean, he's improved his form the last few games, but then he was pretty poor against Sassuolo as well. Number of missed kicks. So, you know, you put pressure on the Juventus back line, they will make mistakes.
I wanted to ask about De Ligt, actually. You mentioned him there, because it seemed like he'd made some real steps forward, I thought, over the last week with the way he played against Atalanta and then against Atletico Madrid in midweek as well. It seemed like 2 of his best games since he's joined, because he's perhaps found it a bit of a harder transition than some people expected. And then against Sassuolo, I think he had a bit of a nightmare again. So what's the kind of... What do you think what is troubling him, and why has he found this a bit harder than maybe people expected?
Yeah, I think you're spot on there with your analysis. I think he was struggling a little bit, but then he had two absolutely outstanding performances against Atalanta and against Atletico. I mean, he was a monster, and he really looked the part. I mean, he was reading the game, but again against Sassuolo, he kind of went back to his old ways again. And just sometimes he's clumsy. He's a little bit clumsy. He miskicks the ball, and he making a lot of handballs. Which people, I think even the Juventus teammates have been teasing him about on the training ground. So you might get a penalty on the weekend, depending on who the ref is. But it's I don't know. It's a difficult one. I mean, he is still very young. Remember, I mean, he's 20 years old. I think people forget that. He's so mature that people forget that he's only 20. I mean, he talks so well. I mean, can you imagine him in 5-10 years' time? What he's going to be like? He's so commanding. Has such a presence about him. But he does have mistakes in him, and I think that's what Lazio will want to try and exploit for sure.
Do you agree with me when I say that Italian football, a lot of people are complaining, saying Serie A, it's boring, etc. But on the tactical point of view, especially when you're defending, Serie A, it's the top level, movement the defenders has to make in Serie A are completely different, especially thinking about the Eredivisie, where, defense is not as complicated as in Italy. So I think De Vrij struggled the first month with Lazio. Same thing is happening now with De Ligt. And for example, in Lazio, Vavro came here highly rated, saying one of the best defender in Denmark, etc. But Denmark football is completely different between the Italian one. So it needs time to adapt, to learn the new movement that you have to make in the Serie A. That's why De Ligt is not shining like we saw him last year in Champions League, because Ajax were defending completely different like Juventus. And even if Sarri is a attacking mind manager, obviously he has to do the defensive part, and it's very Italian there. So I think that's the reason why he's not performing that well. And in general, if you see defenders coming from abroad to Serie A, the first month they all struggle. I think this is the reason why.
Yeah. Just to come back in, I think you're spot on. You're spot on. Then I think Ruud Gullit, obviously former Milan legend, said something similar a day or two ago about De Ligt, that at Ajax, obviously playing in such a weak league. I mean, the Eredivisie is not a strong league. His levels of concentration, certainly when you're marking, when you're defending your own penalty area, which Sarri tends to try and not do. Certainly not as much as Allegri did, but still, you're going to have moments, especially as Juventus have struggled to kind of transition into Sarri's football, as we just discussed earlier. De Ligt is having to defend his area. He is having to defend his final third. He is having to hold the line. Those are things which you have to do more in Italy, because it is a more tactical league, and it is a league where you have to use your brain more than you do, say, certainly in the Eredivisie, but also if you look at the way teams defend in the Premier League, where it's a lot more back and forth, second ball. It's a lot more that type of football, whereas in Italy it is more about using your brain, and that will take time, obviously, for him to adapt to. So I think you're absolutely right there.
Alistair, are you still alive?
I'm still alive. I'd just like to take this opportunity to say, earlier on in the podcast when we were talking about top four rivals, and I said Cagliari looked like they were slipping up. They were 3-1 down at the time to Sampdoria with 20 minutes to go, and now they've gone and won 4-3. So I might have to adjust that assessment a little.
I don't believe Cagliari will be able to fight till the end for the Champions League, but at the moment, it's a very good team. They're going to be able to create problems to a lot of opponents at the moment. And I didn't think they would be able to do this comeback after losing last Sunday against Lecce. But, I mean, they had a very good summer transfer. So I think, I don't know if Carlo agree with me, they can reach the Europe League, especially if we see Milan struggling, Napoli struggling. They can have their chances there.
Yeah, Cagliari were my tip for surprise team of the season, and I actually said I think they can fight for Europa League place. I don't think they'll keep it up for the Champions League. Although they've got a strong midfield, Nainggolan and Nandez and Cigarini, and they've got depth there. Marco Rog used to play for Napoli, and João Pedro, who I think is actually, along with Acerbi and Lazzari, has been for the last few seasons, in my opinion, one of the most underrated players in Serie A. I mean, I see that he scored another couple of goals. I mean, I think he could play at a higher level. So yeah, they will be dangerous. They'll be a dangerous team, especially in Sardinia. If you go there, they're not an easy team to beat. But I would expect them to fall away. I don't think that there'll be too much of a concern for Lazio in the race for the top four.
Just moving on to we get some questions in from our listeners on Twitter, and I've just seen that Steven Scarpula, who wrote to us asking, are you more worried about Atalanta or Napoli as a threat for the top four? He's just about 20 seconds ago added, or Cagliari.
Well, he forgot Roma, to be honest. Sunday after...
I don't think he forgot.
The problem is, at the moment, Napoli is struggling, and I said that's a big problem. Atalanta is playing, again, great football. It depends how many energy they're going to waste in the Champions League or if they get to the Europe League. But yeah, they're playing well, and Roma maybe is not playing as great as we expected, but they're fighting. And I think the positive thing Fonseca did was to give an identity to this team, and Roma will be a tough team to beat, I think. So at the moment, I see Lazio and Roma the favorite for the third and fourth position. But if Napoli come back, they have probably a better team than us, to be honest.
Yeah, for me, with Atalanta and Napoli, they're actually in a fairly even fitting for me, the way I see it at the moment. I think with Atalanta, it kind of relies on a couple of things. You mentioned the Champions League there. I think that's a big part of it, whether their European adventure is extended into next year, whether that's in the Champions League or Europa League, actually. And they obviously don't have the deepest squad in the world. They've had their injury problems as well. So I think that really does stretch Atalanta more than it does other teams like Napoli. And could work in Lazio's advantage, particularly if we get knocked out of the Europa League. I think us getting knocked out of the Europa League and Atalanta staying in Europe would give Lazio an advantage there. But I also think it really depends on Duvan Zapata coming back from injury and what kind of form he can get into when he gets back from injury, because he was such an important player for them up until that those problems came in. And I think him finding top form again could really push them on. So I think that we're going to see a lot more from both of those teams before the end of the year than we have now. But yeah, Carlo, you were already talking about the crisis at Napoli earlier on, and I think that kind of has to have some sort of resolution pretty soon if they're going to turn things around, because you can just tell when you watch them that is affecting the way they're performing.
Yeah, I agree with everything there. I think it's obviously Juventus and Inter are nailed on. Then it's 2 from 4 really, and it's Lazio, Roma, Napoli, if they can somehow sort themselves out, and Atalanta. I don't see anyone else really challenging for the top 4. I would say that in favour of Atalanta, that there isn't a team in Serie A that has more of an identity than Atalanta, and that can be so important because even when you're missing a few players, everybody in that Atalanta squad knows exactly what they're doing, exactly how to play, when to push up, when to defend. All the movements, all the tactics. Everything it runs like clockwork, and that's through the job that Gasperini has done such an incredible job there. So even if they are missing some players, everybody knows what they're doing, and it's I think that Atalanta have got so much firepower as well. They've actually, although it's true they don't have too much depth further down the pitch, I think they do have quite a lot of depth in attack. To be doing so well without Zapata is proof of that. And if you look at Zapata and Ilicic and Muriel and Papu Gomez, and I think Malinovsky is gonna progress and become a good player this season as well. There's a lot of goals and assists and creativity and quality there. So I would not rule out Atalanta at all. But like you said, I think if they progress in Europe, then that certainly will count against them in the new year.
One thing that Iglitare said before the match against Udinese is that Lazio don't need to sign any player this winter, and they won't do nothing. Now, both me and Alistair think that Lazio's missing something. Avvice Ciro Immobile in particular. From outside, Carlo, do you have the same impression, or do you think this team is good enough to reach the Champions League like that?
Well, I think I would agree that it would be a gamble. I mean, it's difficult though, isn't it? I mean, if you take the Liverpool team right now, actually, if you look at Liverpool's attack, there's hardly any depth there at all. You've got the front three of Salah, Firmino, and Mane, who obviously are absolutely out of this world, the best attack in the world. But actually, if you look at what's behind them, there's Divock Origi as probably the next choice. And, so there's no depth there, but they've kind of been fortunate in a way that for the most of the last two seasons, those players have stayed fit. Now, you do wonder whether if, say, a Salah had been out for 3 or 4 months, would Liverpool have achieved everything that they've done? So, sometimes it comes down to luck, really. If, and obviously you'll be touching wood, if, say, Immobile was to get an injury and was to miss 3 or 4 months of the season, obviously it's only natural that that's going to have a devastating effect on you. And if that happens, then I guess you have to ask the question, is Caicedo going to come in and be able to do the goods, produce the goods for you? I mean, I guess you guys can answer that better than me. The problem is, though, who can you actually go out and get in January as a backup for an Immobile or for someone else? It's not easy to find players, not at the very top end of Serie A. So I know Mandzukic is one name that's been mentioned, but I think if you sign Mandzukic, you have to play him. So I guess you guys can probably answer that better than me. Who is out there that you would like to see come in January?
And at a decent price. That's the biggest problem of January, because you overspend to get an average player. But still, I think Lazio should try to sign a striker.
And it's also a difficult role you're trying to cover there in the market as well, is that you're not looking for a Mandzukic because like you say, if you sign a player of that caliber and that experience, you got to give them games. I mean, otherwise, why would he want to come? So I think to bring in someone who is clearly going to have a role as a Avvice Immobile, who's going to be rotated in the team, who's going to be fresh legs, who's going to offer something off the bench, they've got to be either comfortable with that role because they're stepping up from a more middling team, or they're going to be a younger player who is wanting to prove their worth. And I think when Lazio were looking at Wesley before he went to Villa in the summer, that was the right. I was saying at the time, even if he maybe wasn't the right player, he was the right kind of profile of player. Bringing in a young kind of guy from Bruges with plenty of room for improvement, moving to a bigger league. I think that kind of signing is a really difficult one to make. It is. You could say maybe the kind of signing that Iglitare loves making, but in January I just cannot see it happening, to be honest, because Lazio are just hopeless in January.
And Tito doesn't like to spend his money either.
No, by the way, Wesley in England, only 4 goals, so he's not doing really well.
And he was expensive as well.
The most expensive sign for Aston Villa, so I wouldn't say it's the perfect deal they make at the moment. So, Carlo, if you have to say, what do you think is going to happen Saturday? Who's going to win? Or is it going to be a draw?
Tough. I'm going to go for a draw. I'm going to go for a 1-1. I'm going to go for a 1-1. I think Lazio will take the lead. And I'm going to go for Immobile against his former club. And then I think a Ronaldo penalty to make it 1-0.
Alistair?
Yeah, I mean, I am feeling more quietly confident about this one than I have in previous meetings with Juve, but there is just still something about them. They just don't know how to lose. And yeah, I kind of agree with Carlo's assessment. I see it ending in a draw. Just so I'm not copying him, I'll say 2-2 though, because Lazio like to score goals.
Yeah, unfortunately, especially if Juventus didn't draw against Sassuolo, I thought Lazio had more chances. But after what happened Sunday, I think, yeah, it would be good to come up with a draw. And talking about Sassuolo, Carlo, why is Buffon playing? I mean, I loved him, but unfortunately, every time he plays, he does silly mistakes, and it's sad to see him playing like that.
It reminded me of your goalkeeping in five-a-side.
All right, stop. We need to hear more about this.
No, Vito would definitely never have made a mistake like Buffon made. I mean, he 41 years old. He looked 61 really with that goal. I mean, yeah, it was unfortunate. It was a catalogue of errors. I mean, De Ligt did a miss kick before, and then Caputo did a miss kick himself, and then Buffon bundled it. I mean, it was just a comedy show. I mean, I think a lot of people have said that the only reason that Buffon re-signed for Juventus was because he wants to break the record, doesn't he? The appearance record. I think he's nearly reached Maldini now, hasn't he? So, you know,
I think he beat it already. No,
has he beaten it?
I think so.
It might be the overall appearances record. Then.
Okay, yeah.
He's not far off. There is a record anyway that he's. I'll have to check it out. There is a record that he is closing on, and I guess he wants the Champions League as well. But it's only natural at his age that he's going to be past his best. And but the good or the bad news for Lazio is that he won't be playing on the weekend. It will be Szczesny who I think is an outstanding goalkeeper and very, very underrated actually, even if he is a former Roma goalie.
Yeah, he's been brilliant this season, actually.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm still a good goalkeeper, even if I'm older than Buffon.
You're like Marco Bellotta, eh? Marco Bellotta. He was playing until he was like 45, wasn't he, or something?
42. He beat the record.
In Champions League, I think, wasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And won the Scudetto with Lazio. So
there you go.
He played the second half of that Juventus Lazio when Simeone scored.
He was playing the last time we were in the Champions League. That's how long it's been.
Yeah, it's true. He came back from Inter. So, yeah, unfortunately, Szczesny's going to play. So that's not an advantage for us. So this will make things more complicated. But, I think... And probably this is the first time in ages, even though Lazio won against Juventus a couple of years ago away, I think this is the first time where Lazio is playing at a good level that, even Bergomi, we know that Bergomi doesn't love Juventus, but said it should be an interesting match that Lazio could create problems to this Juventus. So this tells you how good Lazio's playing. And Carlo, it's funny because if you think about 4 weeks ago, before Fiorentina-Lazio, there were rumors that this could be the last season of Simone Inzaghi because he could get sacked if Lazio would have lost against Fiorentina after losing at Glasgow against Celtic. how do you rate Simone Inzaghi? Because there were rumors of Inzaghi going to Juventus this summer. Do you think he's ready for a top club?
I think he is, yeah. I think he is. I mean, he really, really impressed me. Not last season, the season before, when Lazio were playing some unbelievable football. With when Luis Alberto was playing probably even better than he is now. I mean, he's been back to something close to his best. And then Felipe Anderson was incredible off and off the bench, and Milinkovic-Savic and obviously Immobile. Lazio were playing amazing stuff, and probably that year really blew it in the Europa League. Really could have gone all the way. I don't need to tell you that ridiculous collapse against. I'm forgetting the team it was that you collapsed against now, but you should have gone all the way that year.
We try not to talk about that. Sure.
Okay, sorry. So he was playing a very modern manager, with the high press, the high line, and really dynamic football. And things kind of got lost last year, and you wondered whether things were starting to go stale. I did anyway, and I wondered whether maybe he had gone at least a season too long at Lazio. But he's got it back now. And so well done to him. I do think that he has the qualities, and he is obviously very highly rated among the the Juventus directors and the Juventus hierarchy. So I think that if he gets Lazio into the Champions League this season, and especially if Sarri doesn't do a job, then I think that if Juventus don't manage to get Pep Guardiola, who I'm pretty sure is probably their preferred next coach, if at all possible, then I think Inzaghi definitely could be in the frame.
And then we can go for Guardiola. I like it. Yeah. I can see Guardiola managing Lazio. Alistair, what's your thought about Inzaghi?
Well, I mean, he's really kind of been justified this season in the conviction he's had that the direction he was going in all along was the right one. Obviously, last season was a disappointment. We don't need to go into all the ins and outs of why that was. But again, he was, after all the rumours in the summer and he eventually signed a new contract, there was genuinely a feeling of this being a new era, despite having the same guy and more or less the same squad. And it has kind of, I wouldn't say it's quite felt like that, but given that not an awful lot has changed in terms of the playing squad and the style of football. But I think there's definitely been a kind of new lease in life and perhaps a new belief in the project that's been put in place there, in the way that they choose to play. And the start of the season was a bit up and down, but we've seen in the last month or two what they're capable of, and you can really see progression there, because I already talked about the defence a little bit at the start of the show, and that's the thing. It's the 17-18 season, that team was absolutely brilliant at attacking teams and scoring goals, but they did let in far too many soft ones. Then last season the defence tightened up a little bit, but they couldn't score nearly as often. And so it seems like he's finally struck a balance this year where the team is managing to keep better shape while really causing an awful lot of problems in the final third. And I think that is a lot of credit to Inzaghi that, he's found a way. He's found a way of making this work, and he's found a way of continually progressing with this team, because that's what so often spells the end for a coach, is when they kind of run out of ideas, like Pioli did at Lazio, and they don't really have the wherewithal to change things. So I think he deserves an awful lot of credit for that.
Alistair, before we wrap it up, do you have the stats to bring for today's show?
I've got one, and it's a Ciro Immobile themed one. So apparently only Angelillo for Inter in the 1958-59 season and Borrell for Juventus in the 1933-34 season, I'm sure you're a big fan, Carlo, have scored 17 goals in fewer team matches than Immobile this season in Serie A history. So 17 and 14 games, isn't it?
Wow.
So there you go.
A great season for Ciro Immobile, and it's not finished. He could beat Higuain record if he continue like that. So we're gonna see what happens. I think honestly, it depends a lot on who's around Ciro Immobile. Luis Alberto is playing incredibly well. Lazzari is, I thought against Udinese probably was his best match for Lazio. And if Lulic now and again find a cross in the box instead in Curva Nord, Lazio can score more goals and Ciro Immobile can become really top scorer. But we have to wrap it up here. Carlo, thank you very much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to talk with you again.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys. I really enjoyed it. It's great to chat about the team, and I wish you good luck at the weekend.
Thank you very much. We really need it, I think. But and Alistair, thanks for joining me, even though the rain in Rome is terrible.
You're welcome. Always a pleasure.
You need to go back to Scotland.
I know, this is the thing. I am going back in about 3 weeks, and I'm scared about what I'm going to find there.
In December, Christmas in Scotland? Wow.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you very much as usual, and we're going to talk about again after Lazio-Juventus and see if we are still there in the third place. Thank you very much, guys. Thanks for listening to Lazio Lounge.